reason that I did with this proposal is because they will expand young urban farmers and have after-school activities and cooking activities. But they have too many ideas for the proposal, and parts of the historical significance will be lost, and they need partners with the community organizations for people to lead their organization ideas. And then the third proposal is the West Product Rising proposal, and I support this proposal because they will support education, jobs, life skills, and entrepreneur classes. They will be partnering with the community groups like Part-Time School District, Athens, Part-Time Government, and Athens Land Trust, which will fund the proposal and the program for this. And then they will keep the garden and market open and update the building for a safer environment, but still keep the historical.
I just want to add as her mom that my daughter went through this program last year for the summer and taught her most of the things that I grew up on a farm to learn. And I can't teach my daughter those things living in the city. She learned how her food comes from the ground as a seed to her plate and how those things benefit her body. And that's extremely important because my 5-year-old just turned 5 2 days ago, literally saw her lemonade getting out of the store. This program allowed my 13-year-old to know exactly where her lemonade came from. I think that's a huge program.
Thank you.
One second. These are the letters that Camp Dove students wrote.
Thank you, Rich. You just handed it up. Thank you. Thank you so much. A little bit out of practice. I forgot to read the little bit about public speaking. So I'll read that down. Remarks, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. At this point, remarks must be concluded. No speaker shall indulge in personal attacks while speaking. All comments are to be addressed directly to the Board of Education. To protect the privacy of our students, speakers are refrained from identifying specific students by name. Personal concerns may be addressed in writing to the superintendent or the president of the Board of Education. Thank you. Our next speaker is Bert Stelz.
I'm in loss of words tonight.
Okay, thank you for being here. Our next speaker is Brent Andrews.
Hello, I'm Brent Andrews, ELA teacher from Cedar Shoals. I understand that improving test scores is important for our students, individual schools, and our district, but as teachers, we're charged with developing the whole individual and helping students become strong, compassionate, engaged citizens. While test scores may drive the national and state narratives, I hope that we as a district remember that our students are not simply the sum of their test scores. The new ELA unit assessments for EOC courses are designed to mimic the EOC and require students to read brand new material without assistance, rather than digging deeper into the analysis of previously studied works. One of the district's professional development speakers focused on the benefits of deep learning over surface learning. We have 178 instructional days, but it would take 180 days to teach and assess these six-week units. Unit 1 requires that I teach my students how to analyze structures of rhetoric, the aspects of various periods of literature, the structure of the EOC itself, and give the assessment along with building community and establishing expectations and procedures, all within the first 6 weeks. Oh, and remediate students in need. I have my students for 230 minutes per week. If there are no interruptions like picture day, required assemblies, pep rallies, college fairs, field trips, etc., and believe me, 0 interruptions of instruction are very rare for a given week. I don't see how we can provide deeper learning if teachers are held rigidly to adhering to all 6-week units. And I'm concerned that we're being asked to choose quantity over quality of instruction. As we were asked to give 3 district benchmarks in the past, I propose that ELA teachers are required to administer 3 or at most 4 of these assessments, as we have been required to teach 4 units per year in the past. We will still teach as many units as possible, but as practice for the EOC will have to be embedded in weekly instruction in order for students to navigate these assessments. Students will receive much training in test-taking skills. This year will be the 4th administration of the new EOC. Teachers are prohibited from viewing the tests that students actually take. And last year was the first year that we were provided release tests and prep materials by the state. In this adjustment period, our instructional teams are constantly seeking balance between test preparation and quality instruction, and are developing methods of delivery both to our students. I also ask that we honor the integrity of teacher-created assessments by counting these major assessments in the same summative test grade category as the district assessments. Teacher-created assessments are tailored to meet the needs of specific groups of students and engage the whole student while still requiring rigorous application of writing and critical thinking skills. If district administration agrees to make these minor adjustments, I'm confident that teachers can prepare our students for the EOCs while continuing to meet the emotional and spiritual needs of all students, but especially those of our most marginalized and vulnerable learners. Thank you, Brent Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Thank you for all of our speakers today. I appreciate your presence and your words. The next item on our agenda is the superintendent's report.
Mr. President, board members, community members, I thought I would stand and be brief. I made a presentation to the board last week at the work session. Had a great opportunity to speak with my Rotary Club, Ms. Williams Rotary Club, yesterday. I just want to go over some highlights of where I think we're going as a school system. So, when we think about our school system, we want to always make sure that we're inclusive, resilient, and have limitless opportunities for all of our kids to grow. That there's no ceiling to where they can go and become. And so you'll notice that our logo has changed. Our colors have changed. The logo is one of sun rays, which represents great opportunity and great growth for our kids and our teachers moving forward. The Board of Education in June passed a new strategic plan. The mission statement of that strategic plan is clear. It talks about this school district being a community of ambitious learners committed to equity and excellence on every campus, in every classroom, for every child. Our theory of action is one in which we talk, and if you're not sure what a theory of action is, a theory of action is an if-then statement. If you do something, then something else should occur. And our theory of action says if the district deliberately works towards eliminating the marginalization of historically underrepresented groups through an organizational emphasis of increasing student achievement for all students through rigorous standards-based instruction, consistent progress on student growth plans, consistent focus on the social emotional development of our students, attention towards equity practices, and accomplishment of our strategic plan, then we will increase the student achievement and sustain educational attainment in CCSD. That's our theory of action. That's where we want to focus our attention and work every day. So our strategic plan has a total of 6 different areas: academic growth, social emotional growth, organizational effectiveness, financial or fiscal health, the growth of professional capacity, of ensuring that everyone's growing from a professional standpoint in educational equity. We'll continue to talk about these indicators of college and career success, but we've identified 8 different areas where a child should be on grade level at a certain point of their academic career. If they're not, then we know that we're organizationally behind in working with those young people. And you'll notice that the first 2 steps pertains to reading attainment. Step 3 is math attainment. Step 4 is attainment on a nationally normed college preparatory examination for students who are in 8th grade through through their junior year. The fifth step is a benchmark of measuring where our students are from a social emotional standpoint. Number 6 will impact what we do throughout the organization, throughout our school system, by ensuring that children are taking advanced algebra by the completion of 10th grade. Research shows that if a child can persist and take advanced algebra by the end of their 10th grade year, that they have the ability to pivot and either persist through their first year of college or succeed in a vocational training program. We want to make sure that all students take some level of advanced coursework, either an advanced placement course, a credit course, or completion of a career pathway. And we've identified a certain benchmark in which we want students to attain a score either on the SAT or the ACT. When people look at these indicators, they will say, well, every child will not go to college. And that's accurate. That's true. Every child will not go to college. College isn't for everyone. But we want to ensure that children have a choice once they go through our system. What we don't want to have happen is children go through our school system, receive a diploma, and that diploma does not equip them to pivot to whatever pathway they want to pursue after high school. If children are meeting these indicators, they have the choice of either going to the military, entering the workforce right away, or going to a 2 or 4 year college. So what we've constructed, I believe, is a coherent instructional system that is supported by research. The Board of Education this past spring, you adopted a new ELA program, English Language Arts program for our elementary and middle school students. When I arrived last year, we had 7 different reading programs for our 14 elementary schools. When I also arrived, I had a lot of people share with me that we have a transient population of students. So we know that we have children who are transient, and we also had different reading programs at different schools. That was a disservice to children. But the research shows that when you ask children to engage with materials that have a high cognitive demand, that they will reach that goal. We also have established school growth plans and college and career readiness plans. We have supports in place to support currently struggling students. And at the core, we have a teacher learning subsystem that is supporting professional learning, instructional coaching, having an instructional coaching school. We have created more collaboration time for teachers. This past week, as we were preparing for the school year, there were 6 days of professional learning. Of those 6 days, 3 were provided to teachers. I've been in the profession for over 25 years. I can't remember when of 6 days of planning time in preparation for a school year that half were given back to classroom teachers to collaborate and prepare. So you'll see in this visual that the role of the district is to create curriculum and assessments. We've worked on creating unit pulse assessments, ensuring that students are moving and growing based on the standards that they're taught at the middle school and high school level. Those assessments can be flexible. They are summative assessments. But what I like to say, I used to be a long time ago, I was a social studies teacher. And when I was a social studies teacher, I always felt that it was appropriate to provide 2 summative assessments. And so when I taught the Cold War, I always gave a summative assessment that was based on the standards in which my administrators, the school district expected me to teach in that unit. But I also created an assessment, a summative assessment that I would call performance-based summative assessment, where you are able to either allow students to work on their own, they can work in groups, it can be a report. In the case of my unit around the Cold War, I used the Billy Joel song, "We Didn't Start the Fire," to ensure that they remembered all those different references of the Cold War in that song. They were able to work either independently or as a group to make it a fun activity to allow me to see if they truly learned the material, not just based on a pencil and paper assessment, but also from a performance-based standpoint. Our school system is committed to working with teachers and ensuring that type of summative opportunities provided to all students. Obviously, we need to have the paper and pencil test to ensure that kids are making movement on the standards. But there's also opportunity for teachers to be creative with their work. Those school growth plans you'll see on the side here are influenced by the site. It is influenced by the leadership at the site. So the schools decide what their school growth plans are going to be. The district doesn't influence it in any way, shape, or form. The review of assessment data, again, is based on the school. The application of teacher data literacy is based on teachers. And then ultimately refining instructional practices is teacher influence. I like showing this graphic because ultimately this work belongs to the schools and teachers. Our job is to support teachers and schools by creating a robust and rigorous curriculum and assessment, but everything else is left up to the schools. John Handy is a famous education researcher. He indicated that the number one influence on student learning is collective teacher efficacy. Collective teacher efficacy means that if a staff believes that they can help a student or students grow, they do grow. An effect size is the equivalent of growing a student one academic year. The effect size of collective teacher efficacy is 1.57, by far the most impactful, influential influence over student learning. In short, we have to continue to support our teachers in believing that every single child, wherever they come from, whatever issue they may have, they can grow. So our mindset has to be one of which where we're not reforming around the edges, but we're truly transforming what we do in the classroom for each and every student. We've talked about equity last year. I want to really focus on social justice. And social justice means that we're going to disrupt the status quo to make sure that historically marginalized student populations are central to our institutional vision, advocacy, and practice. But I want to be clear. I think last year during the conversations, people didn't hear me clearly. Just because we advocate for equity and social justice doesn't mean that we're forgetting about all of our kids. All of our kids need our support and our attention. I shared with the Rotary Group yesterday that when I think about our overall performance of the school system, when you look at grades 3 through 5 last year, 33% of our kids were reading on proficiency level, regardless of who they were. I just see kids. And that's unacceptable that only a third of our kids were reading at proficiency level, regardless of who they are. But if you want to drill down deeper, the fact is 67% of our white students were proficient. When you consider the educational attainment and level of our white residents in this community, I'm not satisfied with only 2/3 of that student population being proficient either. There's work to be done with all of our kids. And so when we talk equity and social justice, it's not putting some groups to the side and propping up others. It's about ensuring that everyone grows. But at the same time, we realize that there is a greatest area of need. There is a focus point where there's some kids who really drastically need our attention. And I believe we can provide that attention while at the same time serving all of our students. I quoted this statement, which actually comes from Peter Drucker, who's a business leader. Victoria Burkhart is an educational researcher. But this statement holds true for the Clark County School District. Your organization is perfectly designed for the results you are getting. I share that to say, whatever has happened in this organization in the past has been good work, but we can be better. We have islands of excellence, but we want the entire school system to be excellent. And so board members, part of the reading that I'll be providing you the next week or so is a policy brief called Islands of Excellence, where it talks about how you can move away from islands of excellence and create system-wide excellence. That's the focus. It's not to say that there aren't good things happening. There are good things happening in Clark County, and we should be proud of those things. But when you consider the fact that we have 2,288 days, when you consider the instructional days, we have about 176 days in the calendar year. When we have 2,288 days, there's not a lot of time to waste with children. See, when a child enters kindergarten and they stay with us through their 12th grade year, that totals 2,288 days. When you consider birthday parties, field trips, and once in a while people get sick, that 2,288 days starts to dwindle. And so there's a level of urgency that we all feel. An urgency that I want to just pause here and allow you to see this video. This captured video. Yeah, it's in the video.
2,288 days. That's how long the Clark County School District has to teach a child. Within those days, we must prepare each student for the rest of their lives, and we cannot fail. We start with discipline and self-respect. We teach students to be critical thinkers so that they can continue their self-guided education beyond our schools. We must teach them to be inclusive and accepting by first making them feel included and accepted. Our education includes rigorous academics, discipline developing athletics, and inspiring extracurricular activities that challenge our children. We must help each student grow socially and emotionally. We must recognize that there are moments when we are reinforcing common sense and other times when we will be the only guidance a child ever receives. Each child will arrive with his or her own unique set of strengths and challenges. It is our job to meet them where they are, recognize all they can be, and do everything we can to close the gap. The commitment to lifelong learning we expect from our children starts with the CCSD promise, a promise to meet the unique needs of every student in every classroom to achieve the moral imperative of educational equity. Our jobs are among the very most important because we have the ability to positively alter the course of our most vulnerable children's lives. The responsibility is enormous, but we must be brave and relentless in our work, endless in our optimism, and tireless in our belief that effective teachers can significantly increase achievement for all students. We will support all among us who turn to us for guidance and growth. But we must recognize that there are children who depend on CCSD as their primary support system and provider of their most essential needs. While this role is challenging, it is vitally important to the community we live and work in. We have 2,288 days to make a difference that will last a lifetime. But at CCSD, we do not count the days, we make the days count.
I'll just conclude by sharing that I understand the conversation around equity and social justice and even pointing out some of our deficiencies from a data standpoint is uneasy to hear, candidly it's uneasy to share. But if we're going to change the path for all of our students, not just one set of students, but all our students, we have to not only engage in the conversation, but then move beyond it and talk about how can we repair the system in a way where we can treat and serve all students successfully. So that's the commitment, that's the promise that we have for our kids. We're excited about the school year. I'll pivot and say it's been a great 3 days. I've been sharing with people, I don't want to jinx anything because it's been that smooth. And as I say that to principals as I walk through, they kind of say, yes, you can leave now. This is the time of year where people don't need to see the district administration. Our job is to support and prepare and put our teachers and principals in the best position possible. And I believe we've done that. It's been a good start across the district. We, on the first day of school, we had 13,337 students enrolled. That is slightly higher than where we started last year, but it's not where we ended last year. We ended with 13,992 students. And so we believe that there will continue to be move-ins and move-outs throughout this school year. We are really happy and hope that all board members can come to the ribbon cutting ceremony at Oglethorpe Elementary School Sunday, August 19th. And Dr. Thomas will tell me the time in a second. Is it 2 p.m.? 2 to 4. It's a beautiful building. We would love to have you at that ribbon cutting ceremony. We are in the throes of placing very large middle school students in the old Gaines building, or what we're now affectionately calling the New Hillsman. The hallways are a little narrow for those larger young people. And construction continues at BHL and Coyle. We wish we would have been at a different place. We're not, but the staffs at both BHL and Coyle have been amazing. And Dr. Thomas and Dr. Clark, the principals at those two middle schools, deserve a lot of credit in keeping people happy, despite some of the challenges that we've been facing. John Gilworth and his team have been working night and day to get it to a place where we would want it to be. There's still a lot of work to be done. The total construction in both Coyle and BHL won't be done until December. So we're looking forward to continuing to see those facilities grow. That's the conclusion of my report. I apologize for the length, but I think board members who were here last week can attest it's actually shorter than it was last week. So I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Meeks. Any questions? Yes.
I have a question. Thank you for the report and presentation. My parent hat allows me to know that at the Clark Middle orientation, there was a gentleman there who spoke. He was like a social justice. No, he was not. I got my terminology messed up. He was a restorative justice coordinator or collaborator or something. I think he's in the private sector working with our district. Is that unique to Clark Middle? Is that something our other middle schools have as well? The orientation on Friday, that all the teachers and a lot of the faculty and members of the building kind of got up and introduced himself, and he introduced himself as a restorative justice collaborator. And I just didn't know if that was something that we're seeing in a lot of our schools, or that's kind of first I heard that. I was excited.
Dr. Meyer started that initiative last year. It was part of your review code of conduct that you approved. And that training has been provided to a lot of our school support service members. And restorative justice practices and techniques are being shared with staff across the school system.
Is he the only person who's, like, are there multiple people in multiple buildings? Is it high school, middle school? I just hadn't.
I'm not sure he's the only person,
Okay.
but I know that we have engaged with multiple trainers to work with our staff.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Means, I'd like to follow up on Sarah's comment.
Something wrong with your microphone. It seems to be.
Testing.
Testing.
Perfect.
Would his position come out of the I think it's 29,000 that each school can apply for? Because I think it's a great, I heard about this too, and I thought it was a great opportunity for Clark Mill, and was also wondering what other schools have been able to focus on that particular aspect of social emotional well-being.
Well, I think a lot of schools are taking a lot of different approaches to the social emotional learning approach. I think some of our middle schools and high schools in particular are focusing on truly trying to stop that school to prison pipeline, however. And the only way you can cut that pipeline off is if you truly start thinking about restorative justice practices. The issue, and we've talked about this before, the issue around our disciplinary situation isn't that teachers shouldn't suspend or discipline us. It's really about building techniques and having strategies. So if you remember that slide that I showed you, that was a circle and it was divided into 4 areas that talked about a teacher learning subsystem. That's part of building teacher capacity and administrator capacity to look at things differently. This is one of many professions where you have to constantly grow. And the disciplinary techniques that were used and applied 20 years ago don't work in 2018. They just don't. And so we want to make sure that we're not only training our staff, but we also want to make sure that our students understand restorative justice so they can relate to each other in a different way. Our school growth plans have 3 major goals in them. One is a literacy goal, one is a numeracy goal, and the third is a social emotional learning goal. And so all of our schools are addressing social emotional learning in some way, shape, or form. Thank you.
I just want to make a comment because I did get to attend 2 days, kick off this school year, and again last year. It was exciting, it was great. Thank you for the goodies. Really like that, that's really nice. But I felt an enthusiasm in the crowd when we were there with all of the teachers and all of the administrators and everyone in the school session. And I do want to say that even as passing through and listening in on conversations as I was walking, there was a difference there, and I'm grateful to see that, and I hope that that energy continues throughout the rest of the school year, that we're supporting that. So thank you for a great kickoff.
Thank you. We were really excited about it. We had 2 high-level days of training. I can't remember which board member said it, but when you approved the adoption of a new English language arts program for our kindergarten through 8th grade staff, maybe you said it in front of the public, or maybe someone pulled me to the side, but the statement was, please support our teachers. Just don't dump a new curriculum in their classrooms and tell them good luck. So those 2 days were spent with professional developers teaching our staff how to work with the new curriculum with the actual materials, and they were working. It was nice that they were all together in their grade level across the district. And so that's what the 2 days were spent doing, and that's what we spent learning. You also have, you should be aware that we have 2 ELA implementation specialists that are now employed in the district. One of the teachers one of the staff members is a former classroom teacher from Chase Street School, and the other is a former instructor from Barrow. 2 schools that have used these materials in the past, well-respected teachers. I'm excited to share that with the community and the board, because one thing that we believe in is you have to build capacity. And sometimes learning isn't always fun or easy, and that stretch isn't always fun, but if you have support, and if we're supporting people in making that stretch happen, then it's easier to do. Part of a growth mindset is allowing people to fail professionally and helping them and telling them it's okay to fail. And when you have support, and when we have 2 people who are helping our teachers put it in place, we're trying to send the message that teachers don't have to be perfect the first time they use the materials, and that we have people in place to support them. And so we're really excited. We were excited about the 2 days. We had two keynote speakers. The first day was a woman by the name of Christine Moraz, who is a teacher in the New York City schools, who has used the materials that we're now providing to our staff. The research shows that collective efficacy grows when teachers can hear stories of success from other teachers who are in similar situations. And so Christine Moraz talked about the fact that she works with some of the poorest kids in New York City, and they have made growth as a result of using the materials that we've purchased. The second day, there was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Richard Milner, originally of Griffin, Georgia. I don't know where Griffin, Georgia is. Oviedo will tell you soon. But he was really happy to be back in Georgia. He's a professor at Vanderbilt, and he talked about race. And it was a stirring presentation. And at the core, he said that you can't do equity work and social justice work if you don't just embrace the fact that there's issues around race and how our school systems historically were constructed around race. And when we can empower staff members to say it's okay to talk about race, but let's not focus on it, but let's grow from it. People are still talking about Dr. Milner and his presentation to the staff and how they were moved by it. I was just at Chase Street School today, and a teacher pulled me to the side and said, I started reading a book because of Dr. Milner's presentation. So we are excited that the 2 days wasn't just only about excitement, but it created a spirit of, when you're in this profession, you have to constantly learn and grow and evolve. And partially, I think that's the reason why we've had such a good start.
Fantastic, thank you for the report. Moving on our agenda to item E, we have two informational items that are part of your packet: Head Start, Early Head Start Policy Council monthly report, as well as a SPLOSH report for your information. And continuing on to board reports. Yes.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
This might be appropriate for documents. So for BHL and Coil, do we have target dates for when everything will get done?
Everything?
Well, or at least
Sure.
in segments.
We are hoping that additional wings, I guess as I look at the project, there were additional wings, there were media centers and agricultural classrooms placed into the new plans, in addition to canopies that were in the back for bus transport. I believe, I count all of that as phase one, and I'm hoping that within the next month, we are completed with phase one.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sort of.
I was sitting here wondering if I should say it, but I always agree with it. One of the things I know we're talking about, the good things that have to kick off with the new school, school opening, is the role that some of the community people played with the greeting at the schools. I think that my visit at, I was at J.J. Harris, and I was also at Houston. But me as a school board member, that's one thing. But when people from the community come out and greet the kids, I think that's much bigger and speaks volume. James left, but I wanted to thank him and Tawana for pulling that off. I saw you in some Facebook pictures, and I think when the administration is there, that's one thing, and the teachers, but when community folk get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to be at school at 7, just to greet the kids, I think it spoke volume, and I think that we should look forward to that type of energy, not just the first day of school, but throughout the school year from the community.
Thank you. We have, moving on our agenda, item F for board reports. We have a report from GSBA.
I've already asked Dr. Means if I can stand up. He said yes. It's really easy to be a lame duck knowing I'm going to be off the board in about 4 or 5 months. But I think it's even more important when I double think about it is that even though I'm going off the board, that we need to have a relationship with the commission and the school district in an ongoing and effective way. So I also want to thank Kelly for being here tonight. I know you won't be here, but I do want to acknowledge you tonight. So while I tried to take a break, my conscience wouldn't let me. So I'm going to continue to work these few months out to the best of my ability. And I'd like to start with a report from the GSBA Summer Conference. It was back in June. Matter of fact, it was June 6th through the 8th. And the theme of the conference was Breaking Barriers, Success for All Children. I attended the policy workshop that gave an overview of the legislative policies that were passed that will affect local districts. Phil Hartley, who is a GSBA attorney, and his team made the presentation. We got this thick book on the policy workshops that were presented, and I'm going to give this, Dr. Means, I guess either to Dawn or Sarah. I'll give Sarah's number, give me no extra stuff.
Pretty collaborative.
But that way you can see if some of the policies that were passed, we are in line with as you're going through the policy revisions. But there were 3 that I would like to highlight, and I did talk to Dr. Means about 2 of them when I came back in June. And one is House Bill 159. Supporting and Strengthening Families Act. And that one, you know, a lot of times our kids that are in the district are struggling, and many of them are caught up in the DFAC system, which also presents another struggle, and many people don't know that. It impacts behavior, it impacts health. Now with House Bill 159, if a parent or a mother is having a problem, they can give them their guardianship for 1 year to a family member, a friend, or an organization through probate court and not go through DFACs. So your kid don't get caught up in the system and can't get out. Now that could have a major impact on how we enroll kids, where kids are living at. So we just need to be prepared if we are already seeing a high transient of children, this might get bigger. So that was House Bill 159. House Bill 763, Dr. Means and I both didn't understand this one, but it is the Attendance School Climate Safety Plans Act and Drills and Act. And basically it is a community group of people who are going to be monitoring and developing strategies around school attendance and the climate in the school. The irony of this is that the person who heads this up is a Superior Court judge. I don't know where that comes from, I don't know how, but it did pass in this House Bill 763. And the last policy that I wanted to mention, and it really wasn't a policy, it was really a presentation on the role of board members in keeping schools safe. And it has a whole bunch of information, and maybe we can just make copies, but we have with the new gun carrying law now, there are some stipulations and board members are responsible for that safety to a large degree, working with the administration. So those were the 3 that stood out. I also attended the governance team meeting, and this was presented again by Phil Hartley. And it was a presentation on the critical relationships between board members and superintendent. And this seems to be a widespread issue across the country about how boards and superintendents work together. On sidebar conversations, some of the board members felt like they weren't included in some of the decisions. People felt that some of the pressure that came from the community was just that pressure and not advocacy, creating tension. My takeaway from this was to be more transparent, and I think we're trying to do that, and that the thing that Attorney Hartley recommended is to make sure you have good policy that you can fall back on and everybody can agree with and work with. Valerie Wilson, who's the director of GSBA, they have some new directions for school districts that they're going to be offering to support school districts. There's a PowerPoint that she is going to send me, and when she does, I'll send it to you, but it's just a new direction and the things that GSBA is going to be doing to support local districts. This was the first year that there is a special part of GSBA that is called a time of inspiration. Our own Vernon Payne started this over 20 plus years ago. Even though he was not there today, on that day, the room was packed with people from across the districts, across the state, for Inspirational Day. This was our little program book. I was able to get almost 100 signatures from people just to wish Mr. Payne well, that know him. He is an icon with GSBA, but to know that you do something and it continues, that means you're doing something worthwhile. We can all do fly-by-night stuff, and we all can do things that when we're not there, it falls apart. Mr. Payne was not there. The room was packed. We got over almost 100 signatures of his well wishes, and that's to me epitome of a leader. I listened to Dr. Eric Thomas. Y'all know who Eric is? Eric Thomas is the Chief Turnaround Officer for the State of Department of Education. And believe it or not, his presentation was very impressive. He talked about providing resources, technical assistance, and to support struggling schools. He talked very, very little about taking over schools. Now, for me, I believe some of the things that he shared were things that we could have already been doing through our State Board of Education. I don't know why we had to create, but we'll see. But he did not talk about taking over schools. Everything was very positive and upbeat. Last but not least, this is the first time that Athens-Clarke County submitted 2 resolutions for consideration for GSBA legislation in 2019. Both were written by Greg Davis and approved by the board to support immigration issues. And I didn't want to belabor the time to share with you the wording, so Dee has put it up. These were the recommendations that were presented to the delegation board. And even though both resolutions failed, one of them, the 4.7, it created a huge conversation and debate around immigration issues. It got kind of crazy. People were voting, they weren't supposed to be voting. So they had to go back and recount the votes. So it did fail, but I do believe from the comments that I got after the meeting, there is a strong support to make sure that we're caring for our immigrant kids and their families. So we hope to see this again next year. I did talk to Dr. Means about our trainings that we go on as board members. And it is at the taxpayer's expense when we travel for trainings. And I think that we should, and this is just me taking advantage of me being up at the mic. I think that one of the things is when we do travel, that we not just give a report on what we've learned, but make some suggestions and recommendations that the board or the administration can consider. Not tell the administration what to do, but just share how what we've learned could fit into the day-to-day practices and let the administration look deeper into it. One of the ideas that I would like to do, based on my experience this year, is to write or make a suggestion on how the process of our GSBA delegate, our governance of operation committee, and our GSBA director. Those are three different things, but they all work together. And in this climate where education is proven to have so many political ties, those are good opportunities to start getting involved with education, with politics. And a lot of people don't even make that connection. Now, this has nothing to do with what I experienced at the conference this year. But I wanted to read this. This was from a superintendent, Michael Haynes, in Long Island. And he sent a letter out that says, this letter is to let you know I don't care what the state growth score is. Let me be clear, I do not care. I do not care about test scores, and because test scores do not define you, you are the test score. Now, I don't know if he's gonna have a job after he said all of that, but the point of it is that I think that the message is clear. Our kids are more than test scores. And I do believe with the presentation that Dr. Means has shared today, that we're aware of that. And again, I think the fact that the community came out Tuesday, we're aware of that. So we gotta get to a place where our kids know that they're more than test scores and that they can be the best they can be with the new direction we're going. Thank you.
Ms. Thorne, thank you very much for that report.
Could I ask one question just for clarity? Absolutely, sure. Olivia, for clarity, because we were discussing this just yesterday, this report was on behalf of you being the GSBA delegate. Were you the delegate?
That was the delegate.
Okay, because we were talking about that at our meeting, so Evita's our delegate.
I was, and you will get another delegate next year. Every year it changes.
Right.
It is different from, and this is what we did in past years, if that's wrong. The delegate is different from the GSBA director. Mr. Payne is the GSBA director. The delegate is a separate position. And then there's another position called the governance operation committee member. And that is the one that we can get legislation out to, that we want GSBA to consider. So those three things are intertwined, but they're separate.
And each of those three different people from our board that can have some voice at GSBA, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
The delegate elected, or were you appointed by GSA?
The delegate is elected by you guys. The director, which Mr. Payne is elected by the counties in his region. And the governance operation person is elected by you guys.
Is that you as well, or is that Greg?
Greg was governance this year.
But you've been in.
I've been in the past.
That's where I've been.
And they'll send you a letter to ask, do you want, to let you know. We never got that information down in the past before.
And just for clarity too, Mr. Payne was elected by multi-district, so it's not necessarily from our district. So it's two appointees that this board will have.
Yeah.
And then when that district director is voted upon, anyone can run for that. But
It's just
that's
coincidental.
district.
And even when you run for the district director that Mr. Payne serves as, if he's gonna run, you still have to it still has to be voted on you that you support him running, representing the district.
And those district directors are elected every 3 years, and Mr. Payne is the district director for District 6.
That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got a question too. See, my understanding went to Macon, I guess, the Government Operations Committee, that I wasn't a delegate. I mean, the people there were the district. From what I could gather, they were district level people. And that I only went because we had something to present to them. That's not true?
No, they should have been board people.
Really? Okay, so, but there was just a handful of people in that group, so does that mean?
I mean, the structure is the way I just described it. How if it's operational, just like we just figuring it out. Maybe nobody else has figured it out, but they should be your, it could be your, what Mr. Payne is, he could be there. But there are only point I'm trying to make, there are 3 different things.
Wow. Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a report from the Government Relations Committee?
Thank you. Real brief, we do have a meeting on, oh God, I keep forgetting the date. It's the, yeah, no, it's 21st. Clara, help me out. 21st? Yeah. We are meeting on the 21st at 4:30. We invite people from the community to attend if this is something that they're interested in terms of legislative items. What we're going to be talking about are kind of 2 things. One is that Clara, who is our community engagement and strategic partnership person for the district, which I think it's fabulous that we have this position. She had experience in working on the Georgia budget primer for 2019. It's produced by who? Yeah, right, and it stands for? Okay, Georgia Budget Policy Institute, and they've got a fabulous document that we're going to be working on. We also are going to be talking about how the committee can do outreach around legislative items that come up in the course of when the legislature meets. And so, because what we want to do is that when there are things that impact education, whether for the good or maybe less for the good, and it will be good for the legislators to hear from the community that this committee, the Government Relations Committee, can help be part of that process to kind of spark that dialogue in the community. So anyway, we will be meeting on the 3rd Tuesday of the month.
Thank you. And Finance Committee.
I don't have anything from Mr. Hammond to make a presentation later.
Okay. Policy Committee.
No report, just that our next policy meeting is August 27th at 4 p.m. Open meeting, all welcome to attend.
Thank you. And Property Committee. Mr. Payne isn't here.
No report.
Okay, thank you. Then moving on to G, our action items. We have minutes of the previous meeting, regular meeting on June 14th, 2018. Any questions or additions for those? Is there?
I was just gonna mention.
Oh, okay. I think I saw the spelling of the name, sorry, I didn't get back to you earlier on this. Oh, it's, sorry, I looked up something else, but I believe that Ms. Tillman's name is missing an L. I think that would have been in the minutes, wherever Ms. Tillman was thanked for her service.
Control find the place. Right?
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm
Thank
nerd
you.
on spelling.
I appreciate it. Ms. Thornton, do you have a motion?
I make a motion that the minutes be accepted with necessary corrections.
Thank you. Second by the House. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Financial report, May 2018. Mr. Hamlin.
Good evening, board members, staff, and attending people tonight. Tonight, we're going to present the May 2018 financial statements. And we'll look at the balance sheet first. Balance sheet. As the end of May, our cash balance was about almost $41.9 million. Our fund balance was equivalent to much activity in the assets and liabilities since we closed year end. And we move down to the expense report. On the revenue side, I will point out a couple of things. Under revenue for 110 ad valorem taxes, we've already collected 100% of all the taxes that we're supposed to have here today. So everything we're collecting now is above what we had projected in the budget. We still have 1 month to go. We're at 99.9% year to date for local revenue. We're at 77.5% for state revenue, is where we're supposed to be. And we're at 539% for total federal revenue. And that is revenue we collect for federal funds and other activities. On the expense side, year to date, we're at 78.3%. We're slightly behind where we need. We're slightly less expenditures year to date where we would be on a normal year in terms of the KPIs I'll show you in a minute. If you can go to the cash flow next, please. On this cash flow, you can see the columns in yellow, that's actual data. The column in blue is budget data. This is the cash flow ending May 2018. We still have 1 month of data to go. If you look at the revenue column there for budget, to your far right, you see at the bottom, we had budgeted $142,851,000. Year to date, we've already collected $143,574,000. That does include 1 month of budget data. At this point in time, we are over, collections are above budget by $723,000. Can you go down to expenses, please? On the far right hand column again for budget, we had budgeted for year-to-date expenditures of almost $146 million. Currently, we have 142.9. So right now, we are under, our expenditures are below budget by $3 million. If you add that to the $723,000 in collections and revenue, we are doing to the good of about $3.7 million versus a deficit that we had planned at the beginning of the year of $3 million, which means right now we're projecting about $621,000 to go to surplus towards our fund balance. And we'll show you some additional detail on that in the KPIs. The first two KPIs show us our activity for cash position and fund balance. And what you'll notice is that red is the current year and black is the prior year. You can see our cash position and both our fund balance positions are ahead of where we were last year. On the income collected and expenses paid, the blue line represents 2017, the red line represents 2018. On the income collected, can see where we are just slightly below where we were collections in 17. We're also slightly below where we were in expense for 17 at this time of the year. For the month of May 2018, we collected $6.4 million in revenue. The pie chart is a breakdown of that revenue. The majority of that revenue, 5.7, was from ad valorem tax. On the expense side, we had $11.9 million in expenditures. The majority of that money was spent in instruction. This two graphs, budget versus actual revenue and budget versus actual expenditures, take the budget and break it out in a bar graph in black from beginning of July to the end of June. As you can see, the red is actual data, and we are slightly above projections at the end of May. But you can definitely see on the expense to actual expenditures where we are behind in terms of the spending. The reason you see such an uptake in the month of June is that's where we have most of our accruals booked for that month. And then the final KPI, this is tracking our deficit or surplus. The first row says budget. We have projected a $3 million deficit fiscal year 2018. As you can see, as the year went along, with the good news, less spending, and good news in collections and revenue, you notice that by January, we're starting to show a surplus, and that surplus column has stayed at the current about $500,000 to $600,000 range for the month of May, and then projected to go along like that for June as well. So at the current rate we're going, we're projecting surplus of some type by the end of June to increase the amount of money we have in cash. And right now, based on May activity, we should end the year with about $27 million in balance. And that ends the financials for May 2018. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
And this does not include what we approved in June.
What did we approve in June? Are we talking about the activity going forward to 19?
But this is through May, right?
Right, this is for fiscal year 18
Right,
only.
so
There's no
everything
19
we
left.
approved in June is not reflected in any of those figures.
Correct. No, everything we approved in June would be for 19 fiscal year, not 18 fiscal year.
Any other questions?
So how much, with the 27 million fund balance, how long would that last if we have to spend it for operations?
Typically, well, right now, that's about 18% of the current expenditures for 19 as a percentage of fund balance. And the state recommends you have at least 15%. And right now, if we had to go about money, that 27 million would probably last us about almost 3 months, not quite 3 months, at the way we spend money right now.
So, thank you.
Ms. Williams, you're going to answer the question?
I just, pardon me if you're not remembering correctly, I can't remember if it was May or June when we used a lot of the money.
Yes, ma'am. We approved in June to
use
use $2 million of fund balance for ELA expenditures in 2019.
Right, and some of that came out of the general fund too.
Yes, ma'am. That'll be on the financials for 2019. And 2019 is, we're not done with 2018 yet.
That's correct, but it will be on the June. We used some of the money from.
The money was approved to be spent on the 19-year budget, not the 18-year budget.
So what month of 19 will we see that?
We'll see those expenditures and those budget adjustments when we present the 19-year financial statements.
Mr. Davis, yes.
Yeah, I think, what people are asking, at least I would have a question. So I know that when we approved the budget for 2019.
Yes, sir.
We were spending money, we were having to go into the reserve to accomplish all we wanted to accomplish.
Yes, sir. So what we did in June was we approved a balanced budget. Then we came back and said that we wanted to use, out of reserve money, the fund balance, about $2 million to purchase over 2 years, the ELA information that we would need to update that program to get that going along. So that will come out of that $27 million that we approved.
But that still leaves it, that's a pretty healthy, as you were saying, that's a pretty healthy reserve. If things continue, if we're this place next year,
Yes, sir, it will.
then we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, if we drop by $2 million, we're still looking at having a fund balance in the 16 to 17% range.
I got you, thank you.
Any other follow-up questions? Yes. And just for absolute clarity, we'll see that drawdown on reserve in.
During the 19th fiscal year.
Yeah, so we'll see it.
Yes, sir.
This fall sometime.
Right.
You'll be reporting.
In fact, I think we already approved the first $600,000 requisition to spend on that $2 million in the month of August.
Understood. Thank you. Is it, as a practical matter, is it, I guess as a practical matter, the fund balance is the fund balance, right? And it goes from one financial year to the next one, whether we're.
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
It's like
Savings.
it's like your, I just went blank. It's like the money in a company that carries from year to year. Your equity.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. And again, I think this helps show that it is a good thing that we talk through these things together rather than just in finance committee like we've done a little bit in the past. I think this is a useful exercise. Have a motion to approve the financials?
I move that we approve the financial.
Thank you, Mr. Worthing. Second by Ms. Davis. All in favor? Thank you. The next item is policies, regulations, exhibits to be posted for public review. It looks like there are none. Correct? There are none. Okay. No action.
Actually, there will be some after our August 27th meeting.
Okay. Yes.
The
number 4, policies to adopt or rescind.
So we have a packet of e-policies that the whole e-policy packet was posted to the up for public comment for just to be in an entirety, just to have total clarity. There are not every single B policy though is up for vote tonight because many of them have been approved in prior meetings. And so we don't have to vote on them again as they have not been back through committee or anything. We're only voting on ones that have most recently come out of committee, which has been a collaborative effort of about 16 months. At our work session last Thursday, we made some recommendations. We've had some discussion, and it was asked what I recommended, and just as policy chair, I threw out a recommendation that I thought that was my opinion, and we can maybe just use that as a launching pad for discussion again tonight. There were some changes that were recommended. One of them was on policy BIFBG, which is board member computer and internet use, to strike the word deliberations from number 1 and then strike the subsequent definition of deliberation in that same paragraph. The second recommendation that I made is actually something, and this is where it gets kind of confusing, so I'll do my best to explain it, but was it concerning the property committee and adding in a line about the property committee will evaluate all of our locations each on an annual basis. However, as a matter of procedure and as a matter of our policy, that one is not actually up for vote tonight. So that will have to go back through the process, which is just back through policy committee, which should be extremely simple. We're just going to add it to our agenda for our August 27th meeting and add that on for that one. That, I don't know, it's our committee's policy, and I'm terribly sorry, it's not in this packet tonight, but it's just our committee's policy. We talked about it last week. BBC. The third recommendation I made was with regards to BH, which we have pulled off of this agenda for tonight to send back through policy committee for a more clarity after our visit next week with Brad Drager. So that leaves us back to, I have one recommendation for the packet tonight, which is to strike the word deliberation in BIFBG and the subsequent definition. Mr. Worthy has a recommendation in policy BE. Could you pull that one up for us on the board? Policy BE. I believe Mr. Worthy, if memory serves, you wanted us to strike the word directs. BE. It's just, it didn't make our printed packet for some reason, so. It's super short. Don't look right by it. I'm sorry. I don't have it. I have BDD, BDG, and BGA, unless it's out of alphabetical order. So Mr. Worthy has recommended striking the word directs, so the board authorizes the superintendent to designate an open records officer. So striking the word directs and.
Yeah, that's in policy BE, and I thought that I recall reading, but I can't recall what policies, but you know, you get into some shaky grounds there when the Board of Education get into directing the superintendent. So I know the word direct is in the in policy BE, and there may be some others, but I'm not sure.
I think it's important to note that, and we talked about this at our work session last week, and this is where it gets really hard if you attend some meetings and not all, and all that, and hear some conversations and not all, but to try and trace the evolution of this. I think it's important to note that we had a training with a gentleman named Tom Alsbury. We, as a board, elected to adopt the balanced governance model for board governance. And in doing that, we've had to make adjustments to our policies, but these aren't actually policies that we have put into practice yet, right? And so I think it would be important, and I won't be on the board in a year, but I think it would be really important for to note that it would be prudent to reevaluate some of these and see how they actually work in practice. And until you've done something like that, it's really hard to know, you know, that would be the best measure of what these policies are, right? Do they work when you practice them? And so I do think that this board being committed to the work would also be committed to, while this is an overhaul and it takes an enormous amount of time, I think a review would be a different thing, and hopefully you wouldn't have to do a whole overhaul, but a review of these and how they work in practice. And so I'm 100% certain not one single one of these policies is perfect. But I know that a lot of hard work and a lot of effort and a lot of thought and a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions have gone into each and every single one of them, and you continue to discuss them through the years, through time, and see how things work. So, like what prompted me to say that is Mr. Worthy, there probably is the word directs in another policy somewhere else, and we're just going to continue to do our very best. If we all decide that that's not an appropriate word to use in policy, and we see it somewhere else, we will continue to. These are not cut into stone and stuck outside. They are reliable and workable, and they are evaluated constantly. It's important for us as a board to wrap up this work in an effective way because there's other work that needs to be done for the district. And so I have encouraged our board to move with this. But in a way that's productive and healthy, and with that, having a commitment to continued evaluation of these in practice.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would like to ask our attorney to speak on using the word directive to the superintendent. And I see, yeah, there you are.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but, again, the general rule of statute is the board sets the policy, the superintendent implements policy, and operates the school district on a daily basis. So the board would never be directing the superintendent on daily operations or setting policy. That's his primary function for the code.
Thank you very much. And we do know that, I know because I read policy BE that the word direct in there. And hopefully we can strike that tonight. That's just one word. That's real simple.
Yes, Ms. Williams.
And I would just like to address another question to council. Who is responsible for the open records in the school district?
Right now, not me, it's delegated that to Dr. Thomas.
I know, but who in code is responsible for it? Because this could also read that the superintendent is responsible for that, and he may delegate, and he is authorized to delegate that to someone else. But I
Right.
think that's overall.
Right, it's worth the suggestions, I understand it, just to strike directs and just have the board authorize the superintendent.
Right, but my overall question was, who in the scheme of school districts is responsible for open records? Would it be the responsibility of the superintendent?
I would think so. I mean, the open records law applies to all state agencies and all local government agencies. So there's nothing specific in that law about school boards as opposed to any other branch of government. In the way the school systems operate, that would typically be an administrative task. Obviously, the board can convene and discuss and respond to every open records act request.
Right, and I was just thinking the way this reads, it would be a board responsibility to, and I would think it would be a superintendent responsibility, and he's authorized to appoint someone else other than himself. But it's got to be a posted position if it's responsible, and who gets the request.
Right, that's correct.
Thank you. Ms. Lucy, you have a motion we can consider?
Sure. I would like to make a motion that we approve policies DAB through CF on our agenda. Do I need to read them all?
Yeah.
Okay. With the following changes, striking the word directs and in policy BE, and striking the word deliberations or, and the subsequent definition of deliberation in policy BIFBG.
Thank you, Chelsea, seconded by Ms. Davis. Let me go ahead and reiterate to make sure we're on the exact same page. But we're talking about policy BAB, BBAB, policy BBD, policy BBI, policy BC, policy BCAB, policy BCAC, policy BCAE, policy BCB, policy BCBF, policy BCBG, policy BCBH, exhibit BCBHE1, exhibit BCBAG2, policy BCBI, policy BCBK, exhibit BCBKE1, exhibit BCBKE2, policy BDC, policy BDD, policy BDF, policy BDG, policy BE, with the words direct struck from that policy as proposed. Policy BGA, policy BHA, policy BHB, policy BIFBG with the word deliberation struck, plus the
And the subsequent definition.
and policy CE, policy CED, and policy CF. And
Sorry, I
That's
got
fine.
read that, I didn't mean to stick that to you.
Ms. Ellison made the motion to adopt those as changed in our conversation, and second by Ms. Davis. Any questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Davis.
Trying to get this to work. Let me just say, and I do certainly honor the vote of the board, but one of the policy chair had said, at the last policy meeting, the importance of putting all the policies together at the same time. And I know at that time I had questions about BH, but it was recommended that we just go ahead and move it forward and with all the other B policies and then make public comment. And from there, we could have a discussion as a board. I don't want to get into a situation where when there is something that would create what I would consider a healthy board debate, that we say, well, let's don't do it in front of anyone. Let's, not sure, as the policy chair says, anyone can go to the policy meeting. And that's true, but the turnout of a policy meeting is generally very small, as is most of our committees, versus our regular meeting. And so I do think we missed an opportunity to actually have a healthy discussion on board ethics. And so I am disappointed that we're not having that, and that we're going to relegate that again to the policy committee. So.
And in response to that, this is a little bit off topic of the motion, but in response to that, Greg, I think that we are coming at policy BH from too many different angles. And I think that we need a little more clarity, and I'm hopeful that we'll get a little more clarity from Mr. Drager. I think we all have a little bit of a different opinion about some of the components of BH, and we need to streamline some of our discussions, and that was the rationale, was not to take it out of this meeting. The rationale was to have a little more conversation with Mr. Drager next week and to bring it back then. If we elect at the policy committee meeting to bring it back before, it will eventually come back before the full board, and not if we elect, it will. The procedure and the process will bring it back to this exact room on another night.
And I also see, I also see the BH discussion, kind of the cup half full. That I see this is it's really, really healthy for us to have fantastically different opinion about what our code of ethics are, because we have really different understandings about what our job is around the table. And so once we kind of get some our heads wrapped together around what is it that we are doing here as Board of Education, and in particular of how that plays out, then we can come up and have an ethics policy. But the challenge seemed to be that in discussing the ethics policy, the verbiage of the ethics policy, well, we need to step back and have get some consensus around what it is we're doing, and how's that reflected in a particular policy. So I think this stepping back for a minute, I think will be really constructive, especially with a couple of new board members and a couple more new board members coming on.
I want to be real clear. The only reason why I'm stepping back is because I have not reviewed policy. And that's the only reason. I am not trying to avoid a public conversation or debate about it. My assumption was, when I made the vote, was that it would come back up for public
It has to.
Conversation. I don't think, I would not support that if I didn't think it was going to be in a public setting in the future. I just have not been on target with this, and to be honest with you, I probably would go along with whatever Greg recommends, because I didn't look at it for myself. But given the opportunity to do that now, I will. So let me be perfectly clear. This is not to avoid, on my part, a public discussion.
Every discussion regarding policy is done.
Mr. President, I feel compelled to say this, and I'm happy that we're doing it this way. Good work, Ms. Chair, the Policy Committee, because policy, code of ethics, BH, policy BHA, conflict of interest, this Board of Education didn't write those policies. Those policies were written by the state and approved by the State Board of Education. So therefore, we have to be very careful in terms of how we reword things, and there's some word and some language we can't take out of those policies. So I think this is real healthy in terms of, I know that Ms. Sarah has done and I don't use this word often, an excellent job in handling this. So thank you, Mr. President, for supporting that. It goes back to the policy committee, and then it must come back to the Board of Education. Then we can have further discussion on it if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Lyndon.
Go ahead, Gary.
No, I want to hear Lyndon first, because I'm just.
Okay, so yes, I do remember us wanting to have the discussion publicly. We will have that discussion. I'm excited that we're gonna have that discussion after everything else in our government. It'll be nice to focus only on that, because it is a big issue for us. And so, yes, we did kick it back out of policy and say we would talk about it openly. So we will talk about it openly when it comes up again in the next round, it'll be pretty much by itself. I think that's a good place to be. And it's interpretation more than conflict on this one, I think, is how y'all see it through our lens.
Thank you.
Now,
Mr. Davis.
okay, I really appreciate this healthy discussion. We're kind of talking about, and at least I guess that's a start. I know when I meet with Mr. Dreger, I'm not walking in with any paperwork for him to review, but, or other board members may. I know in terms of the new members, I certainly agree that we are having 3 new members, and if we wanted to postpone the discussion until those new members came into being, I would be, open to that, but I don't think anybody's proposing that. I do think in terms of the, Charles is right, at the core of this ethics policy does come from the state, and it was helpful for Sarah to respond to me, as well as Don and Mr. Pruitt, in terms of what can be removed in the wording and what cannot from BH. However, one thing, Charles, is that we've added a lot to BH, was our wording. And so while we can't change what the state legislature allowed, the Board of Education, the State Board of Education, who in turn seek to empower the GSBA to come up with an ethics policy, which is still in effect. We've done a lot of additions, and much of the public comment dealt with both the wording and the tone of what we, as a policy committee, added. And that's why, because I read the comments very carefully and, made suggestions for this board to talk about that reflected probably 90% of those comments. And so it's fine to have it back at the policy committee, because that's what the board has asked for it to be done. But I do think for all clarity, the one advantage about having these discussions in a regular meeting is, first off, Mr. Pruitt has reminded us time and time again about trying to be have as much open discussion as possible. Not the policy committees are not open, but again, the attendance is generally less. And also, it doesn't generally include all the board members. And I think that if the next time we talk about BH, I hope that we do have a healthy discussion and don't just kind of say, okay, everything's fine, let's just, I mean, and that's about what we're ready to do, is that we have all these board policies that we're just gonna kind of say, it's all good, and not have any discussion. And some board members were there as they were being written and rewritten, and some board members weren't. And I think there's an advantage to having all the board members, particularly when it deals with something like board ethics. Thank you.
You know, again, I keep thinking, this is coming back, right?
Absolutely.
And my other thing is, the real world is, all the board members need to be doing their homework like you. And that might not be the case all the time. And I remember I fell short at, but like I said, but because this is so important, and you're the only person I really talked to about this, and I totally support you in your suggestions. I just wanted to be, I want to just be on the same level that you are. That's the only reason. If I thought for 1 minute that this was going to be, a behind the doors type, no, I would not support it. So just as long as I'm clear and on record that this should be coming back, and we should be taking into consideration those comments that we received from folks. That, I am really glad. Meeting with Mr. Draper next week, that don't mean that much to me. It really, I just want to get caught up on the policy. I don't think that, well, I got my personal opinions about that. So that's not a key factor for me. I just am glad to have the opportunity to get caught back up.
Thank you. And it should be clear to everyone that we are going to, this, according to our policy, the policy that we're not voting on will be right back in front of all of us again.
Absolutely.
So we have a motion and a second to adopt the policies as, with a few word alterations we have discussed. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is consideration of consent agenda. We have items 5 through 12 as our consent agenda. Can I have a motion for consent agenda?
Yes.
Ms. Davis made a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Mr. Worthy. All in favor? Thank you. The next item is to approve personnel recommendations. We've received a list of personnel recommendations from superintendent.
I believe you also received an addendum in front of your place, and we mentioned at the work session that due to the time of the year, we would have a lot more hires. And so it's my recommendation that the board acts on these recommendations this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Means. A motion?
Motion.
Ms. Davis, motion to move to approve the personnel recommendations. Second by Mr. Davis. Any questions about the motion? Mr. Davis.
I do. Dr. Means, and I know this is, I guess this is your second August. But in terms of, one thing that has always been, and I've said this repeatedly, that really wanting to give, with the school district as much authority as possible to get, to hire folks as early as possible so that we have the best selection. Do you have a sense of kind of like where we were last August in terms of this particular list? Is it shorter? Is it longer? Has it been? And I know you were in on the very tail end of last year, but I'm just trying to get a sense of what we need to do as a board to. I mean, I know you've talked about this meeting in July, and so that's one concrete thing. But in terms of where we're at with because it seems like a lot of people to be hiring after school started. But I know they've already in the job, at least I'm hoping they are. But,
I can give you some figures. The number of resignations that we had at the end of the 2014-2015 school year was 146. The number of resignations for the 2015-16 school year was 158. The number of resignations for the 2016-17 school year was 185. The number of resignations, and so that's not retirements or people, resignations that we had at the end of this 2017-18 school year was 200. So I think there's a trend that we're seeing in the Clark County School District where we're seeing a higher number of resignations. Ms. Duke and I have talked. We know that we have to get to the market even earlier than we have in what we even did this school year. And so we'll continue to make that effort. I think there's also an opportunity for us to use the mid-year adjustment that we receive to allow Ms. Duke to go to job fairs and offer bonuses to prospective candidates, because that's what other school districts are doing. We don't. The last thing I would suggest is that instead of losing people who are in hard to hire positions like special education or school psychologists, there's other areas where we know that it's a tight job market. Ms. Duke and I have talked, Dr. Myers and I have also had this conversation. We think it's prudent for us to bring something to this board around the concept of giving people bonuses to stay in those hard to hire positions, because they're free agents and they know that the market is there's a lot of opportunity for them in other school districts, and other school districts are providing supplements. In some cases, they're offering annual supplements to those individuals to stay in their districts in those hard to hire positions. I think overall, we understand that we're going to have a more of an entrepreneur type of approach to human resources moving forward, and it may mean looking at the hard to fill positions and finding some incentive for those individuals to stay. The last thing I will say is that from a research standpoint, I kind of dug into some research around teacher retention. It's harder to keep teachers in urban settings. And what I may not, Obito will tell me later, I may not know where Griffin, Georgia is, but I know where Athens, Clark County is. And when you compare our school district and what we're asking staff members to do compared to the surrounding districts around us, it makes for an interesting employment pitch to those individuals, right? So what I'm suggesting is that in other areas around us, they're more suburban-like districts. We're more of an urban district, generally speaking. When you look at the district as a whole, and the research shows that it's tough nationally to keep people in teaching positions in urban districts. So when you combine all those different components, and I haven't even brought up the other component, but I'll bring it up now. The other component is we are in a university town. And so there are individuals who initially start their careers where they may have finished their education, either at Piedmont or UGA. But that doesn't mean that they're putting down roots in Athens, Clark County. They may start here and then eventually they pivot and they go other places. Those are all disadvantages for us in terms of how we need to get out in front of the HR issue. There's a shortage of teachers in Georgia. And so that's a component to all of this. We understand that we have to be more creative in some of the incentives that we use, but we also understand that this is a challenge that everyone's facing right now in this state and frankly nationally in terms of the teacher shortage, especially hard to hire places like special education and school supports.
Thank you.
Can I have one follow-up question?
Okay, so we have a motion about approving the personnel recommendations, the list of recommendations we have specifically in a second on that. We have a question about the motion?
Well, the motion is based on the fact that we're taking a vote on a lot of people that we're just hiring. So all I'm asking, the superintendent is it possible that we have a work session maybe in November or whenever you think is best on the issue of what we're doing around recruitment? Is that reasonable?
I think if we have a conversation about the governance role of the board in that space, that could be a valuable conversation.
Okay.
If we're going to have a conversation about the work and the recruitment efforts that Ms. Duke is implementing, I don't think that's a good use of board member time. If you want to talk about the governance component of it, and so the governance component of it is what policies are going into place to assist our human resource department in doing this work. What type of funds do you want to carve out in fiscal year 20?
That's what I'm talking about.
Those are exciting. If that's where the conversation is, then yes, I think it would be valuable. I don't know when is a good time, but I think it would be valuable to have that discussion with the board because again, I can't emphasize enough, we realize we're going to have to be more creative moving forward.
Thank you. We need a vote, we do. All in favor of the motion and the second to approve the personnel recommendations? Any opposed? Thank you. Then the next item that we get added to the agenda, 14, is to move into executive session for the purposes of superintendent evaluation. Dr. Means, yes.
My recommendation that the board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing superintendent's evaluation.
Thank you. Ms. Davis? Ms. Second? Ms. Ellis? All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you.